Come on.
Martin, how are you doing?
Fine. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm on the slow but on the road to recovery.
Everything is okay?
Yeah, I'll get back to 100%. It'll be a while, but I'll get back to 100%. At least if I don't make my wife do it.
There's always that one. Well, isn't there?
Put it together.
No, I'm just.
Thanks for the bio.
But which one? Here's. Yes.
We're going. Paperwork.
Yeah, okay.
We're good. Well,
Street, I think you might have used through this night.
good. Another day in here.
We talk a lot on the phone, a lot in person. Yeah, thanks for all your work on this.
Yeah.
morning.
Welcome. Thank you all for being here. At this time, we will call to order the Yamhill County Board of Commissioners formal session for June 28th, 2018, and we'll start with a flag salute. Carrie Ann, would you lead us in the pledge? Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This is the time we have set aside for invocation. Commissioner Primizic?
Yes, Commissioners. I'm pleased to have today Dr. Ryan Connor. Dr. Ryan Connor is the lead pastor at the Amity Christian Church. He is a licensed professional counselor and the founder and clinical supervisor for Western Oregon Counseling, a small group practice providing individual, couple, and family counseling. The offices in Amity and McMinnville. Dr. Connor serves as the board chair of the Yamhill Community Action Partnership, one of the leading social service nonprofit organizations in the county. Pastor Ryan also teaches in the Department of Professional Studies at Northwestern Christian University in Eugene. Pastor Ryan resides in Amity with his wife and 2 children, and I'm very pleased to have him here to do the invocation for us today. Please, if you would, Dr. Ryan.
Gracious God, we are thankful that we can come together in a place where we ask for your wisdom and your grace to fall upon the decisions today. And as you instructed us to pray for kings and those in authority, privilege to pray for these local matters in our county. Pray, Father, that good will be done, that wisdom will prevail. Pray, Father, that your grace will rest with us. Father God, I thank you for the opportunity for each person here to share what is on their hearts and on their minds, the concerns they have for the good of our community. We ask this for the sake of your Son. And in Jesus' name we pray.
Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Pastor, also for stepping up to head up YCAP, the board. We've had 2 major changes there now with our executive director and with our board chair stepping down. So thank you for being there and making that commitment.
Thank you.
And this is the time we have set aside for public comment. Does anybody intend to speak on anything other than what is on today's agenda? I don't seem to have any intent to speak cards, so we'll move on to the consent agenda. And do we have any items we want to remove from the consent
Yes.
agenda?
Madam Chair, I'd like to remove item number 29, the resolution that is mentioned on 929, consideration of the adoption of Resolution 18-6-28-2. So if we could pull that off and put it to other business.
So and do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda minus item 29?
Also approve.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve the consent agenda. Any further discussion?
None.
Okay, hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The motion passes. Let the record show Commissioners Primizic, Olson, and Starrett voted in the affirmative. And then we'll move on to item 29, which is the consideration of the adopting Resolution 18-6-28-2 in support of Yamhill County's 175th anniversary on July 5th, 2018. So at this time, I will read the resolution. And this begins, whereas the Oregon Provisional Legislature was established by a vote of 100 people near the Willamette River in 1843 as the first step in the creation of a formal representative governmental body to establish laws and execute the will of the people. And whereas the former Yamhill District, later county, was named for the Yamhill Native American tribe and created on July 5, 1843 by the Oregon Provisional Legislature, and whereas Yamhill County was established 5 years prior to the territory of Oregon in 1849 and was the first of 4 districts created by the Oregon Provisional Legislature, and whereas the original county stretched 12,000 miles east to west from the Willamette River to the Pacific Ocean and north to south from the Columbia River to the California border. And whereas the immigrant wagon trains of 1843 and 1844 brought the bulk of the original settlers into Yamhill County, which now exceeds 100,000 persons. Now, therefore, the Yamhill County Board of Commissioners calls upon all residents of Yamhill County to celebrate its neighbors, agencies, and organizations in support for Yamhill County on this day, and do hereby proclaim July 5th, 2018, the 175th anniversary of Yamhill County, Oregon. Do we have a motion to approve?
I move approval.
All right. So we have a motion to approve. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 The motion passes. Let the record show that Commissioners Permasic, Olson, and Starrett voted in the affirmative. And I want to take this opportunity to thank Carrie Ann Martin for the work she did, not only in putting together this resolution, but also in a celebration that's going to be happening at the Heritage Center on Saturday, and it'll start at 10 and go until 4. So there'll be lots of exhibits and a whole lot going on out there, and I understand root beer floats as well. So please do come by and celebrate the anniversary of our
Root beer floats
root
for
beer
all.
floats for all.
Thank you, Carrie Ann.
Thank you very much. We appreciate that. All right, so now we will move on to, let's see. All right, old business, we have none. Oh, do we have to do the resolution for approving the budget, or is that considered under the?
That was a
in the
part of the
consent.
consent.
On to old business, none. Other business, D1, we have the consideration to approve Amendment Number 2 to the contract employee agreement between Yamhill County and Mike Brandt, and that's per Board Order 16-311, effective July 1st, 2018 through June 30th, 2019. Do we have a motion?
I would so move.
Okay, we have a motion to approve item D1. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Let the record show Commissioners Olson, Primasic, and Starrett voted in the affirmative. On to item D2, docket G-02-18, the required amendments to the zoning ordinance to allow accessory dwelling units within the urban growth boundary. And
Madam Chair, that was actually the second item. The first item is the other docket number.
NFD.
I skipped right over that. Oops, sorry about that. Let's go back to item D1, and that is the docket NFD-01-17, applicant Linda Lindsay, an appeal of the planning director's approval of a dwelling not in conjunction with farm use non-dwelling. So at this time, we will open the hearing and have a call for abstentions or objections of jurisdiction. Do we have any? Okay, hearing none. Can we have a reading of the statement, Counselor, required by ORS 197-7635?
I'll do that this time.
Okay.
Oregon law requires that persons who attend a land use hearing be advised of certain rights and duties before the hearing begins. First, with regards to the standards for approval, state law, ORS 197.763 sub 5, requires that we list the applicable substantive criteria that must be met in order for the county to approve the application. The standards will be listed by the county planner in a few moments as part of the staff report. Testimony, arguments, and evidence must be directed toward the standards for approval. Second, the raise it or waive it rule. Under Oregon law, any issue that might be raised in an appeal of the county's decision in this matter must be raised before the record of the hearing is closed. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the decision makers and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes appeal to the board based on that issue. Under ORS 197.796, failure of an applicant to raise constitutional or other issues related to proposed conditions of approval, again with sufficient specificity to allow the county to respond to the issue, precludes an action for damages in circuit court. Finally, since this is the initial evidentiary hearing, I will also note that under Oregon law, on any participant, that is anyone who submits oral or written testimony during this hearing, may, before the record is closed, request an opportunity to present additional evidence, arguments, or testimony regarding the application. The request must be made prior to the time the chair announces that the hearing is closed.
Thank you, Mr. Friday. Do we have a staff report? Stephanie?
The subject parcel is 1.5 acres located off of Buena Vista Drive. The property is forested and currently undeveloped. The soil survey submitted with the application shows the soils are predominantly non-high value. All surrounding parcels are zoned EF20 and are predominantly 5-acre parcels with rural residences and a mixture of forested areas with some small farm uses including vineyards and orchards. The applicant submitted a deed which shows the parcel was created in 1975. The required 2,000-acre study area determined that in addition to the subject parcel, only one other parcel could potentially be approved for a non-farm dwelling, and no other lot of record dwellings appeared to qualify. The application needs to comply with sections 402.03I and 402.08 of the Yamhill County zoning ordinance. And that concludes the staff report.
Thank you, Stephanie. Do we have any proponents who would like to make testimony?
My name is Yamhill from the Davis Attorney, and I'm here on behalf of the applicant in application N-3-017. The applicant supports the staff's decision. I believe it's supported by substantial evidence in the record. Given the concerns, I summary won't take up too much of your time, but I'm happy to answer any questions you may have, or if you have questions at this time, reserve my time to follow.
Thank you. Any questions, Commissioners? Okay. Thank you. Do we have any opponents who would like to testify? And if you'd state your name and address for the record, please.
You
can get that too. Oh, okay.
My name is James Wrights. I am the appellant. My address is 17920 Northeast Williams Drive. I too will keep my comments brief because I've been to many hearings in my career and I know how these go. I know time is of the essence, so I will get only the highlights of my concerns. Going to start off with the water supply. Recognize that water supply is regulated by a state agency, Department of Water Resources. One of the handouts that you are now receiving is an article from the Port of Illinois. This issue I raised in my initial letter of concern about whether or not the water supply in the Red Hills are in fact sufficient for reduction of the well. I'm sure you looked at all the maps, you've seen how the homes are clustered along the bridge. Wells are in close proximity to one another. My well is basically on the property line of my property and applicant's property. So my concern, of course, is that a new well might adversely affect my water supply. Now, I know you cannot do anything about that specifically today, but I did want to get on the record. My concern there particularly is that while you're referring to the Department of Resources as evidence on the running article and previous articles, the agency doesn't necessarily have a good understanding of the inbound water supply and the water supply. That seems to be one of those items that we are going to wait and see, cross our fingers, and do the best. And I hope that is the case. I don't know why it's not done. But I just don't know what my reports would be at that. So I just want to put that out there as a warning. The two items, though, that I think the Board of Commissioners can address, and it's the second handout for the photos. What you have before you is a series of photos from the intersection of Williams Drive and Silver Drive all the way to the top of the street road. And this evidence in exactly what there is reference there to the fact that it is a single lane grid road. That additional ramp, as you can see, that as one proceeds uphill, is to be seen and good. There are plenty of turnouts. There is no ability to get on the road of oncoming traffic, and if there is oncoming traffic, and trust me, we know I'm basically the only one who is on the road right now, uses this driveway. I still meet people on this road. And when that happens, one of us has to back up. That is inconvenient at best. It is misery at night with headlights in my eyes. It is further compounded with weather rain. It's not only unpleasant, it's unsafe. And I'm not sure that the proposed conditions of approval adequately address that. There is a reference in the draft report to the Deputy Fire Department, Fire Chief. There was an initial comment made about regular drive needing to improve county standards. There was a subsequent email to withdraw that comment, and then a conditional approval for the application that fire chief would have the ability to impose some conditions concurrent with building. Well, that leaves me wondering just what will I do not know. It is not clear whether this project will have to be approved in any way. And I have to wonder if, in fact, the roadway would already satisfy the fire department standards. And I say that because this road, first construction, first good, was sufficient to move a house. My house. I live in a double-wide manufactured home, and it was trucked up this road and put on my road. That was 30 years ago. Since then, it was a manufactured home above my property, maybe 10 years ago, that was trucked out using this very same road. So if the road is already adequate to handle that kind of load, then I would conclude it's probably already adequate to serve for fire department access. Well, if in fact the road's not going to be improved in any way, then I'm right back to earlier discussions about there simply isn't the ability for two cars to pass. So this new home is going to create more traffic. Again, this driveway, it's driveway. Serves only me. More traffic means one of us, at one time or another, is going to be meeting the other, going in and out. That's going to be a process each day, every day, just going forward. Unless there is something to improve the road. And that gets to my last point. That has to do with another reference in the draft report about Ravens to Drive being a public road, privately maintained. Well, who's the one privately maintained? That would be me. And that would be my neighbors, the Vinces. When I bought my property some 30 years ago, about 3 years ago, it was a condition right in contract that the abutting property owners are responsible for maintaining the site. And the Vinces on it, as long as you go. I didn't see anything in the staff or staff findings or the application indicate that after this property is similarly done. So the concern there is new house, new traffic, more maintenance required on the road because of the new traffic, more out-of-pocket expense by myself and the Vinces to the benefit of the applicant. I think that's not only an unfairness issue, I think that's also a constitutional issue. Because now, my out-of-pocket expense goes to carry decisions to the right. Now, all that said, I'm not here to be hostile. I think there's a way forward here. I think there is the ability to modify or embellish on the conditions to address these issues. What I would like to suggest is that Ravens Drive be widened to some width, I would consider to say 30 feet, 24 feet, but some width to allow two-wheeler traffic up to, at least up to, where the applicant would be taking their private drive access on the business drive. I'd like to see some kind of graphic stipulation as to roadway width, the cross-section, how stout this is going to be built, and particularly the drainage. Drainage is critical for any road, but it's super critical on a hillside. Loose gravel, good drainage shower, starts to wash away. So drainage is key. Yeah, I don't know if the fire department or the standards, as any of this, perhaps they do. If they don't, that does need to be something that we consider. My only personal key, this is kind of an addendum. Williams Drive used to be a full right-of-way through from Sylvan Drive all the way over to Fairfield, excuse me. Middle segment was vacated some years ago. And apparently, even in our current technology, that hasn't gotten out to all the Google Maps and MapQuest and whatever. Every week, there was somebody coming up that road realizing that it's not going through and they have nowhere to turn around. So they routinely trespass on my property to do so. The other choice, of course, being to back all the way back down to this time. So I'd like to see some signage down at the intersection that says no through road, or dead end, or no turnaround. Something visual that maybe the driver was paying attention to. So far, I haven't had much luck in that. And my last request is getting to maintenance. And that is that the applicant be directed to prepare some legal instrument so that they too have some obligation to participate in maintenance of this in whatever improvement level it ultimately achieves. Because again, it's just not fair, I believe, that we, joint should pay exclusively for our maintenance. Go on that, if you should, but in this case, also. That's all I have.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions?
Just, you made many references to the road, rain, and that type of thing. How often have you had to have the road graded, or what type of repairs have you had to do to the road over the years?
Well, one thing my neighbor, Mr. Lindsay, is contracted by trade. He's a bit of an equipment nut as well, so he's obviously looking to kind of do a lot of the labor. We have collectively spent money to buy rock, and we have also installed some PVC culverts, done some ditch work. It hasn't been high demand, because again, basically, I don't know using the road.
Understood.
So my 2 trips in and out daily, that's not a lot of wear and tear. Your average single family property is 6 million applications. Your average single family home generates about 10 trips a day. That's average. I'm at the lower end, other homes are the high end. I just want to do a lot of factors for this. But it's certainly going to be how frequently we go through these meetings.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you.
I have just one last thing. What I would like, if you all would entertain this, would be to continue the hearing and allow the applicants and myself to talk over these options that I lay out here today. My hope would be that we could come to an agreement and then come back to you, hand in hand, as it were, say, we come to an understanding, versus having you impose something today that perhaps.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Friday, I just, I had a couple of questions before we talk about the next issue, which would be continuing. And I had a couple of questions about Chief Stock did make that comment about the road having to be brought up to fire code, and then that comment was removed from play.
Yeah, my understanding was that he spoke with the applicant, and maybe the applicants can clarify further what the discussion was. And it sounded like the road department was not concerned with Buena Vista Drive, and so it sounds like he withdrew his concerns with it as well. Still requiring that the applicant's driveway on their property would have to meet fire code standards, but that Buena Vista Drive itself was sufficient. So that maybe they can elaborate on that if there's any more. Okay.
Did you want to say?
Well, I wasn't wanting to address that, but if the board decides to give a little bit of a break for both sides to discuss that, which we'd be in support of, I was going to talk to the opponent about maybe getting a no turnaround sign and talk to him about where that might be a good place to put it, because I could see that minimizing the conflict with other people that are coming out to the site. So.
Yeah, I think the two things that came to mind were the water issue, which I think is something that's significant and everybody worries about that, but we don't have a provision to legislate that one way or the other, which I don't know for good or for bad whether or not that's a good idea, but it could have an impact, but we don't have the mechanism, the vehicle, to actually use that as a criteria.
That's right.
Commissioners? I think my only question and comment is with the comment that Chief Stock made, because when they evaluate a road, they evaluate every residence on that road for fire service, and to say, well, from their driveway is going to be okay, but the rest of the road, well, if that adds more traffic to that road, Buena Vista Drive, it may make none of those houses service. So I'm a little concerned with his comment of making it and then withdrawing it based on what our Public Works Department says. So, because that is a privately maintained road.
Right. So the Public Works Department would have no maintenance obligation there. It is truly the citizens who live on the road who are responsible for its upkeep and maintenance. As far as the signage is concerned, we certainly can see to it that we get a sign there. That's something that the county can take a look at, and I can certainly talk to our Public Works Director about that issue. But a condition of the type and maintenance of that road would have to be something that was negotiated between the individuals living on the road, since it is a privately maintained road. And I don't know that we have, a sit-down chat we could probably require as a condition of approval, I guess, but I think that it is an issue that needs to be addressed if in fact it is a concern. But I think we should hear from the proponents before we delve too deep into it.
What I was going to suggest is that I always would rather see people work things out rather than having a governmental body make a decision and impose a decision. So that, before we even get any further, I think going away, working stuff out, there are legitimate concerns about the road and certainly about the responsibility of another property owner having buy-in to that. But I would just want to hear your comments. And could we have your name and address for the record, please?
Yes, thank you. Excuse me. My name is Elaine Aldridge. I am a Davis attorney at Davis Wright Tremaine, 1300 Southwest 5th Avenue, Portland, Oregon 97201. Also representing the applicant in this proceeding. So thank you for the opportunity to respond prior to taking any further action. I wanted to address a few comments that have been raised. I think first, as Stephanie described the discussions that took place following receipt of appellant's comments and into the public record following issuance of notice. Applicant took action and initiated discussions with the county and with the fire chief to better understand what the comments were to date and get the fire chief's input on the state of the road, Grand the County Road, as well as potential access points for applicant's property and proposed driveway orientation. So when we did go meet in person with the fire chief, when we took photographs and maps and looked at Google Earth, very similar to the photographs that you received today. And that meeting resulted in a modification of his prior comment, and it resulted in a position of condition number 6, which addresses fire safety or access issues for the property. One thing I'll comment is I agree. I think it's great if parties can work things out outside of a public hearing context, and we would welcome further discussions. The private maintenance agreement, though, however, is a private matter between the parties and the neighbors. The property is not subject to a previously recorded maintenance agreement, so it would be something that would need to be negotiated. And you know, we're open to those conversations as we are a neighbor on the roadway, but I think there's also a reality to understand about Landis Road if you've been up there. It dead ends at the Lipinski property because it's blocked, and so by barriers that have been in place, supposedly identified by the landowner themselves, and so there's that issue. I think the combination of a sign at the bottom of the roadway, if it could be allowed to be put in the public right of way, that way we wouldn't have to negotiate with private property owners about where to place the sign. That could be an accommodation the applicant would be willing to accept, but requiring the applicant to carry the burden for improving a county roadway, particularly on property that the applicant doesn't own, and just cheap that can't carry that burden. And so with that, I'm happy to answer any questions, but I think I would request that the board move forward with its decision making today and deny the continuance. And we will commit on the record to have conversations with the neighbor about a private maintenance agreement and see where that goes. But at this point, we feel like we have worked diligently to respond to the neighbor's concerns within the context of the land use proceeding, and we would request that the county proceed.
I want to ask the opponent, are you asking to leave the record open for 7 days, which is your right under the land use law? Okay. I'd also suggest that the board make sure that we don't have any other opponents, because as I understand it, the applicant was coming up to respond to one question, but we really are still at opponent's cases. So.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Do we have any other opponents who'd like to speak at this time? Okay.
I would have one more question. Has there been any contact between yourself and the applicant concerning this road issue that you've raised? You haven't tried to initiate, nor have they, is that correct? You have not tried to initiate, nor have they? Okay, thank you.
At this juncture, anyway, then if there isn't any, maybe we can close the public hearing and deliberate?
Well,
or is
The
there,
next step is public agency comments and then rebuttal.
do we have no public agency comments, do
No
we?
additional public agency comments.
And
other than those in the record.
staff recommendation then?
Do
Rebuttal.
rebuttal first.
We would need the
Did
rest
you
of the
want a
rebuttal
rebuttal?
by the proponent.
Do you have any other?
Yeah, just to address the second issue that was raised during the opponent's testimony with respect to the well. There is a condition in the staff decision that requires applicants compliance with the Water Resources Department regulations. And we're committed to doing that. Like Appellant, we were also concerned about water supply, and so that will be taken into consideration when citing the well location on the property. We don't want to have intentional conflicts, so I think that just to agree on that. So, yes, it is really a state water law issue, not a local zoning code issue.
I was just going to, although the state does not require any kind of sort of pre-well siting testing, has there been any effort made to do any independent look at groundwater supply or siting of a well or anything like that, independent of what the state actually requires?
At this point, there's just been a preliminary land use work done to get the property permitted for non-farm dwelling, and then once that is approved, there will be further investigation before any development moves forward. So, to date, no. We're still in its early stages of property development.
Okay. Anybody else have any other questions? So, staff recommendation?
Yes, staff would recommend approval of the request with the conditions noted in the May 3rd decision letter. With the addition of condition that the applicant shall initiate a conversation with the owners along Buena Vista Drive for a road maintenance agreement. And the addition of signage at the beginning of Buena Vista Drive that would include that it's a dead end and there's no turnaround.
And just to be clear, we would try to initiate that with our road department. So.
It is a public road.
Correct.
And privately maintained, so being a public road, there is a certain right-of-way that comes with that, and the sign can be placed on a public right-of-way, so.
But just so you're clear, as a publicly maintained road, not a county road, if you were directing Public Works to spend time and resources on that road, you would have to take that through a formal action. The board would have to instruct the road department to spend that money on a public road that is not county maintained.
That is privately maintained, correct. But where that road connects, Sylvan Drive, is it?
Commissioner, can you speak up into your mic? We can't hear you.
I'm sorry. Where that road connects at Sylvan View Drive, I'm sorry. That is a publicly county maintained road, and so a sign placed on that right of way would require no further action, and it would do the same job. So I think we can get around any problems in that respect to get signage on that road if it's going to be a problem. And but Madam Chair, have we closed the public hearing yet?
No.
Okay.
More comments?
That's correct. No.
Okay. All right, then at this time, we'll close the public hearing and close the public hearing, and we'll have some deliberation.
Madam Chair, I would move that we approve the application with the conditions that have been brought forward in the Planning Department's recommendations, and that since there is no request to hold this hearing open, that we take this action today. And I think the conditions make it clear that everybody's concerned about landowners negotiating and coming up with their own solutions. So that would be my motion.
So we have a motion to approve. Do we have any further discussion?
I think my only discussion, Madam Chair, is as I listen to everything today, I'm a little bit, I guess, frustrated that the applicant themselves didn't take up the right of working with the neighbor, even though it was suggested to them. But because there was no continuance offer or no required, I'd have to vote with Commissioner Privilege. But it does frustrate me that the applicant doesn't sound like they're real willing to work with. So.
yeah, along those lines, I agree. I always think, and we've often had this happen in this room where we've had a lot of contention and we've said, hey, could you guys just kind of go have coffee and work it out? And they've come back and it's been an amenable situation going forward. Always like to see that because, believe it or not, when you have a lot of skin in the game, as you do as property owners, you really all have the same interests. The road situation is not unusual. There are many roads in this county that are narrow and sort of less than optimal when it comes to two-way traffic, and you just deal with it. And it's been done on lots of roads that have many more houses than 1, 2, or 3, so I know it can be done even though it's not fun. But I appreciate that you're adding that condition that there be more discussion about road maintenance, and I don't think that's unfair. If you're going to use the road, pay to play type of thing. The other part about this is the water issue is always a concern. We don't have a good answer for addressing those questions. It still exists today. Whenever you've got new construction, you're wondering how that's going to affect your aquifer. So at this point, I would be inclined to, we'll take the vote at this time. All those in favor of approving docket NFD-01-17 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion passes unanimously. Let the record show Commissioners Primozic, Olson, and Sterrett voted in the affirmative. And I hope that we can have a really good result, and we'd appreciate knowing what you wound up coming back with, that everybody does work together on paying to maintain this road. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, we'd come back in 3 weeks with the written documents for the final adoption.
Okay, so we'll have final adoption of the approval of the docket in 3 weeks. And that is the 28th? What is that? 28th. Is it the 28th or the 26th? Hold on.
The 19th of July.
19th.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so that'll be on the 19th. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So with that, we'll move on to public hearing number 2, and that's docket G-02-18, which required amendments to the zoning ordinance to allow accessory dwelling units, ADUs, within the urban growth boundary. And so we'll open the hearing, and we don't have abstentions, we don't need objections.
This is a legislative.
You're just going
hearing.
to
Staff
You can hear
report?
from staff.
kind of give us a staff report. We'll start with that.
Yes. The passage of Senate Bill 1051 and House Bill 4031 amended ORS 197 to address the housing crisis. In the county, these bills have the effect of adding as a permitted use in the urban growth boundary accessory dwelling units, or ADUs, to every zone that allows single-family dwellings. So in other words, if a dwelling is permitted on property in the UGB, we are to allow an ADU with that permitted dwelling. The new law also allows us to adopt reasonable standards, which is why we're before you now with this ordinance. Since accessory dwellings are intended to address the lack of housing supply, we added the provision that it can't be a short-term vacation rental. The goal of these proposed text amendments is to provide consistency between ORS 197 and the county zoning ordinance, and to develop reasonable design and siting standards where ADUs are permitted. ADUs in the industrial and commercial districts were included for consideration. They're a little different because residential use is not the purpose of these zones. However, they do allow caretaker dwellings as a permitted use, so we did include them in the proposal. And the Planning Commission did recommend to allow ADUs in these zones. The Planning Commission also recommended the additional language related to the ADUs using the same driveway as the principal dwelling. Madam Chair?
Okay, thank you very much. Do we have anyone who wants to speak in favor of? We have someone who has, Mr. Byrd? Okay, Ms. Byrd? If you'd like to come up here and state your name, and come on right up here. Here, would you like it? Do you want to read this?
Yes.
Okay.
I wasn't sure I'd be able to say the whole.
Oh, sure. So if you want to state your name and address for the record, please, and have a seat. Can you give us your name and address, please?
Lloyd Bird, B-Y-R-D.
And your address? Your address, please?
1989 Southwest Oleander Court.
McMinnville? Okay.
Sorry.
That's okay.
No.
Okay, the house next door to me has, for a year, there's been one of this fellow was building next to me in the street. And he lives in a camper in front of it. And these are on his mother's, but they're on the sidewalk, Oleander Court and Oleander Street. And, I made it a little price list thing, so I have sometimes one place to park in front of my house, but they have so many vehicles, they have one that's almost always parked there. It's hard for them to put the garbage out. They're really nice people, and I hate that, that I lived in next to them for 20 years, watched these kids grow up, and now they're great grandkids living there, and there are people all over the court, and it's just, okay. So it just says, yeah, that's pretty much it.
Thank you.
It makes me frustrated.
Okay. Thank you. Any comments?
I'm not so sure if that's in the urban growth boundary, if that's not within the city limits of McMinnville itself.
No, it's down for no sign we have, we're in town.
Let's say you're in.
So you're in McMinnville.
It's already within them.
In city limits, right?
Yeah, what we can do is, since this is a county ordinance, there's not really any jurisdiction that we have on the city issue. But what we can do is, I'll keep track of where we are in the hearing, and I'll send a link to Heather Richards at the city planning department and let her know.
That's all right. We're glad to have you here.
It's okay.
Yep.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see that.
We do work together with the city.
Yeah. It's a little confusing, but yeah. Thank you.
But thank you for coming.
Thank you for coming. All righty. Okay. Any other, anybody else want to address this? Okay.
Any other testimony?
Any other testimony? Okay. Hearing none.
I guess one question, and this is for Stephanie, or I don't know, maybe Ken. Well, as we go through these changes, have you got any feedback from whether the majority of cities are in favor of this kind of change or not in favor of it?
It's one of those things that's imposed on the cities actually right now.
But you haven't got anything back where
There's been a lot of online discussion with the Oregon Planners Network about how to do this, and I went through yesterday and probably looked at 25, 30 messages back and forth from cities, and we're right in there with the regulations that they're proposing. And since this is in the urban growth boundary and properties eventually going to come into the city, I'm pretty happy with the ordinance that Stephanie has put together to address this. And I have some confidence that this might be allowed in the rural residential zones in the future. I mean, I'm actually hoping that it will get allowed in the rural residential zone. And we may be coming back later and proposing to lighten up on some of the restrictions in the rural residential zone, but at this point, it feels like this is what the cities are doing. This is property that's going to be coming into the city. It seems like this is I believe it's a very good ordinance that Stephanie's put together.
Okay, thanks, Ken.
Do we want to, okay, go ahead.
Well, I just, you had mentioned that it prohibits vacation rentals as that. What if the existing residence is already used as a vacation rental? It does not in any way change that allowable use? Okay. But the driveway issue remains the same, and that rental would remain a rental, but the house, a dwelling built adjacent to that, and there's a minimum, if I understand, of 900 square foot.
Yeah, so it's a maximum of 900 square
All right,
feet.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
But if it's underneath a house that's a 2,000 square foot house and the basement is 1,000 square feet, you can still do it. You're not limited.
Okay.
So
All right.
there's exceptions to that.
I guess going back to what Stan said, if if there's already a short, let's say if the one residence on that property is already a vacation rental, and they put another piece, that would not be auxiliary to the vacation rental, would it be?
The way the ordinance is right now, that's correct, yeah.
Okay.
And it does allow month-to-month rentals. It's just the bill that was passed was really focused on additional housing, and so.
Right.
Put that in the.
Well, that was, somebody's renting it on a monthly basis, but
Do we have a staff recommendation?
Staff would recommend approval of the proposed ordinance.
Do we have a motion?
I would so.
Close the hearing first, Madam Chair.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Before you take the motion, we need to have the first and the second reading of the ordinance. We have the draft ordinance ready for you to vote on today. And it does have a emergency clause, so we can have both of the first and the second reading today if you'd like. So before you deliberate, I will go ahead and read the ordinance by title only, hearing no objection. This is in the matter of approval of zoning ordinance text amendments required by state law to allow accessory dwelling units on parcels within an urban growth boundary where single-family dwellings are an allowed use. It's planning docket G-02-18. The applicant is Yamhill County and declaring an emergency, and this would be ordinance 906. So now, if you want to
Go
make a
ahead
motion,
with this.
you can have your deliberation.
No, okay. So I would make the motion, Madam Chair, that we accept the Planning Department's proposal and affirm that proposal.
Okay, we have a motion to approve item E2. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in
Okay,
favor?
then I would need to do the second
Yeah,
reading.
you do the second
Before
reading.
you do your final vote. So, hearing no objection, the second reading by title only in the matter of approval of zoning ordinance text amendments required by state law to allow accessory dwelling units on parcels within an urban growth boundary where single-family dwellings are an allowed use. It's planning docket G-02-18, applicant Yamhill County, and declaring an emergency, ordinance 906. Madam Chair.
Okay, all right, then, we have a motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion passes. Let the record show Commissioners Olson, Promizich, and Starrett voted in the affirmative. Do we have any announcements?
Madam Chair, I'd just like to thank staff and my fellow commissioners for the support they've given me over the last week and a half with the issues, medical issues I'm going through. Just so everybody knows, the doctor says that the prognosis is for 100% recovery. It'll be a little while yet, but hopefully within 3 weeks or so, I'll probably at least be back most full-time after I get all my physical therapy done. So I just wanted to thank staff and Laura and Ken and all the rest of staff and yourself for that.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Yes. And it's good to know that I don't have just Commissioner Starrett to
Yeah, and
contend
that's
with.
why I'm hurting back.
Torment.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks. I'm glad you're back. All right, if there's nothing else for the good of the order, we'll close today's formal session. Thank you all very much.